Welcome, everybody, to the Family Biz Show. I am your host, Michael Palumbos, with Family Wealth and Legacy in Rochester, New York. Today, we have an incredible show for you. We have Jennifer Murphy and Dan Judge from Net Plus Alliance with us here today, a fifth generation family business that we have tons to learn from. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us today.
And as we always do, we just like each of you to introduce yourselves. Tell us, what was your journey into the family business? What was it, a twisty, winding road, or was it something that you woke up and said, I can't wait to do this? So Jennifer, if you don't mind starting us off.
Well, I guess mine was a little twistier than yours was, but I'm the current president of Net Plus Alliance, very proud to be the fifth generation of this family business. I didn't really come right into distribution. And I think if you had asked me when I was in college or younger, if I was going to be working in the distribution business, I would have given a very enthusiastic no. I graduated from St. Bonaventure University, which is here locally, just outside of the Buffalo area, and majored in marketing. I took a little break after college and lived out in California for a while, and then moved back to the area briefly before I took a job in Boston at a company called EF Education. They were a company that did cultural exchange and language education for teachers and students. And I started in the marketing department, and then I eventually, through my career there, I became the director of incentives. So I oversaw their loyalty program, which was a $1 million loyalty program that we used to facilitate relationships and create engagement across all the educators that were that were our customers. So I moved back to the area when shortly after my daughter was born. My husband and I are both from the area. He's from quite a large family. There's only my sister and I, so from a much smaller family, but we both wanted to be back in Lockport to be closer to our families and raise our kids. And in 2006, my dad said to me, you have a little time on your hands. Maybe you'd like to come and help my business that I started a few years ago. We could use a little bit of marketing help. So you could work part-time or you can work from home. I often say to people in our industry, it's sort of the way that he tricked me into getting into the business. So that was in 2006. I was the director of marketing and just managed a lot of the aspects of the marketing program, implemented email marketing, transitioned the little kind of newsletter publication that they made into a full color newsletter with advertising. And then also really just started to take on more responsibilities. As the business grew, my dad started handing me more things to do from in the operations side. So I transitioned from being the director of marketing to being the VP of marketing and the COO. And then in 2013, I became the president of the business, which I still am today.
Congratulations. That is a twisty, windy road.
Yeah. California to Boston and back to Lockport.
Sure. And one of the things, a lot of family businesses have that rule that not everybody does, that you need to go and prove yourself outside of the business first. That's one of the nice things from, your dad's perspective, is he could look back and watch your career and say, yeah, she'd be good here. I can teach her the other stuff, knowing that, she's there. Good.
It wasn't as glamorous, though, with all the traveling that she was doing in the previous job.
Fair. So Dan, tell us your story. How did you end up in the family business?
Well, mine is a little more direct. Just to give you a little of the history of our corporation, the company started in 1885 on the banks of the Erie Canal as a machine shop. My would have been a distant cousin, William Nolan, ran a machine shop. And of course, the canal had just really come into being, and there were a lot of industry and manufacturing built up along the canal, because in Lockport, there's a 60-foot drop so there was a lot of water power. A lot of mills were created. In 1919, William Nolan died, and he left the business to my three great uncles, who are pictured right here behind me. They incorporated the business as Ward Brothers Mill Supply Company, and became more of a mill supply house than a machine shop. So a mill supply house sells tools and abrasives and nuts and bolts types of materials to all of the industry that was growing up along the canal. They incorporated the business 1931. My father joined the business in would have been the mid 40s, and so as a young boy, I was down there packing orders and putting stuff away, and worked a couple of summers driving truck. And when I got ready to go to college, he came home with a brochure from Clarkson that had a program in industrial distribution, which was our business. It went from being known as mill supplies to industrial distribution. So I went to Clarkson, took their industrial distribution program, got my degree, and spent 2 years in the Army. So my time away from all of this was going in the Army, spent a year in Vietnam. Came back, went to the University of Buffalo and got an MBA because I figured I needed to kind of re-educate myself, but worked at the family business while I was doing that. And my cousin, Sam Ward, who was the son of one of my great uncles, he was running the company at the time. He was the majority stockholder. And he said, "Well, you're coming to work here, aren't you?" And so I never looked for another job, and I started here, and just grew with the company. We grew as the General Motors plant here, Harrison Radiator, grew. They became the sole air conditioning manufacturer for GM cars and trucks. So our business grew along with them. But as business in Western New York started to leave because of the Rust Belt and all of that, in 1990, Sam decided to sell the business. So we sold the assets of the business. I worked for the company that bought us for a couple of years, and I could tell that wasn't going to work, and decided to start Net Plus Alliance in 2002 from
Nice.
scratch. No suppliers, no distributors. We had a business plan, a couple of friends who helped me, and it was we're off and running.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you both. That's again, two different pathways in. And I have heard both, and so that rule is just a rule of thumb, I would say, as terms of having, go spend 3 to 5 years proving yourself. And then if you really want to do this, you can come back, is kind of what we hear again and again. Dan, like, what you said was, I was in the shop, I was packaging orders and doing things. And so from a really young age, you got to be around the business and see, what it was like to be there. I have another family business. I love the story. His grandfather was a geneticist and from Cornell, and he would splice different, varieties and grow them in the greenhouse to see what, where they would go and collect the seeds. And he would follow his grandfather doing all that work, and just knew that, there was nothing else he wanted to do besides grow cabbage. And so, but you only get that. I think those things happen when you're involved and when you're doing the kinds of things where it was fun and enjoyable. I'm in this business. I did a bunch of years ago, and when I was in high school, Dad would pay me an exorbitant hourly rate, which at the time was great for me, to build out prospecting cards for him. Back in the day, everything you would dial for and to meet people, and he'd say, go through the phone book and give me all the plumbers, give me all of the, whatever. And it was neat. I didn't love it, but at the same time, I got a feel for it. So when he said, you haven't asked me about coming into the business, might want to take a peek at this because you'd be really good at it. And so we started talking, and that's how I, ended up there. But I went back. Had I had a bad experience, right, as you're doing those things, never would have, probably considered it. So
yeah, it was pretty interesting, because I sort of worked in all aspects of the business while I was in college, and before, when I was just, driving truck, meeting customers, learning how all that relationship building. But it was my 2 years in the Army as a second lieutenant that really gave me the leadership training that was helped me throughout my whole career.
Great.
And I can only say I worked in the file room when I was a kid. I would walk there after school, and I did not get paid an exorbitant amount of money. I got paid a very small amount of money, enough to be able to buy candy usually between school and going to Ward Brothers, which was really close to Ward Beals McCarthy, which was close to my school where I went. But the numbers on the purchase orders were about this long, and the purchase orders were made of tissue paper because they were the carbon copies. So you had to file these by these like 9-digit numbers with these little tissue paper pieces of paper. So maybe if I had been sorting widgets in the warehouse, I would have never said that I wasn't going to work in the business. But the best thing about the warehouse was, first of all, it was cool to be in the warehouse with all the tools and all the supplies. There's also an old-fashioned pop bottle machine where you could get pop out for a quarter. So that was the big incentive of working in the office, and everyone was super nice. And so my dad's career in the industry over the years, we as kids got to benefit from that as well, because my dad served as the president of the associations that are within the industrial supply community. And we got to go to shows, and we got to go to things. We got to travel to places when my dad would go to either speak at those things or to participate in those shows. And a lot of the people that are still in our industry today are people that I knew from when I was a kid. So I think one of the things about this industry is it is kind of like one big family of family businesses, but people have really grown up together. So everyone is still really closely connected throughout the industry. Even though it's a real big industry, it feels very small.
So,
And
yeah,
I think the whole relationship building through my career is what got us here.
Mhm.
Going up through the chairs of our trade association, so I got to know a different level of manufacturer and distributor. I was dealing with the owners, with the presidents of the companies, and then after we sold the distributorship, I ran a buying group for industrial distributors. So there was 40 distributors that had formed a purchasing co-op, and I was actually one of the founding companies. But then when they needed a president in '93, I went to run that group, and I ran that till 2000.
okay.
And then when I decided to start Net Plus Alliance, we put a press release out, and I got calls from manufacturers the next day that I knew that said, if you're going to start this group, we're in it. So it was that relationship building over those prior 20 years that really got us to be able to grow the business quickly at the beginning.
Mhm.
Great. One of the words that people are talking about still today, as we went through this whole COVID thing, we're still not through it, but being able to pivot and being able to be nimble. And, as we talk to, clients and people on the show, we're always talking about, when's the last time you did your SWOT analysis? This is not something that you do once every 3 years. This is something you probably should be doing every quarter right now as we are going through these difficult times. But what started as a machine shop is not a machine shop today. And you have pivoted more than once. Would you, one, talk about, if you can, go back in time for a little bit and see, do you know, one, what were the pivots, and two, do you know why they pivoted? Were stories passed on in terms of, what was the cause or effect of those pivots as they were doing it?
Yeah, well, I think the move from being a machine shop to a mill supply business was pretty simple. I think when they were making tools and making the other things they were making in the machine shop, and my great uncles went in to help their cousin, they just started buying inventory and having things that were already made, nuts and bolts and tools and grinding wheels, and selling them. And I think eventually the machine shop business because I don't think any of the three of them were machinists. When that sort of started, that business diminished as they started adding more inventory. And that was a very successful business up until really till the 1990 when we sold it. But we had trouble maintaining our sales volume as a Bethlehem Steel would close or Republic Steel would close. We made 2 acquisitions to grow, but all we were doing was replacing the sales that we lost because of the customers that left. And the reason we were able to buy those 2 distributorships was because they lost the same customers. And there were people that were ready to get out of the business. The pivot to, once we sold the business, the pivot was, I want to stay in the business. I've got all these relationships. Is there a different way to do it? I wasn't going to start another mill supply house. So that's when I got into running ID1, which was that first buying group that I managed. And those 40 distributors were all really close friends. And then the manufacturers became close friends. In 2000, the buying group was dissolved and the members all voted to join a much larger group. And there I was in 2000 without a job. And I needed a job at that point. Sure. And so I kept a couple of the people on who helped me run ID1. And we dabbled in a couple of things for a year or so because I had a non-compete with the group that acquired our group. And then sitting around with 3 friends who were all retired and sort of in the business. So, well, let's think about what we could do. And somebody said, well, let's start a buying group. So we just kept writing out all these ideas and how are we going to do it? And what kind of distributors do we want to attract? What industries do we want to be in? How much are we going to charge? Are we going to have restricted territories like all of the other groups had restricted territories? We said, no, we're not. Figured out a name, came up with Net Plus Alliance. And as I said, we had a business plan and a press release and no suppliers and no distributors. Today we have over 400 distributors and 160 product suppliers. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Jennifer joining the business.
Yeah.
And as you can tell, I'm probably, if I started in the business in 1969, I've been around for a while. So with Jennifer coming in and really, starting our marketing program, which was at that point was a black and white 4-page newsletter. And she says, Dad, you can sell those ads. We were just putting this thing together. If somebody sent us stuff.
Right.
They're not going to buy those ads. Well, they did. And then we made it color and, the rest, she's just done a phenomenal job, built a great team.
Great. So Jennifer, would you mind, for those people that don't know what a buying group is and, what Net Appliance does, why don't you talk about, Net Plus Alliance a little bit, tell us what you do, who you serve, and talk about the things that, you've made the newsletters, one of those things that you brought to the company through the years since you've been involved. What are some of the other things, initiatives, or I call them rocks? What are the rocks that we tackled to build the business to where it is today? And how did you make the decisions to go down those roads?
Sure. All good questions. So buying group essentially is a group of distributors and manufacturers that make a commitment to buy from each other. We have 400 industrial and construction supplies distributors and about 180 manufacturer, wholesale, and business services partners. Our distributors sell a lot of what my uncles had sold. Many of them are also like family businesses, family-owned businesses. They sell industrial supplies, contractor supplies, safety, fasteners, anything you'd see on a job site or in a manufacturing facility to keep the wheels turning, keep the buildings going up. And our members are located throughout the US. We do have a couple of members in Canada, but our footprint primarily is in the United States. And those, we have about 400 distributor companies, which translates roughly to about 2,700 locations throughout the US. So, I mean, in terms of the other big rocks, which we used to call them those here as well, I'd say one of the most pivotal changes in the business for me was I participated in a program through the University of Buffalo School of Management called the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership. I went into the program in 2011 and graduated in 2012. So the time I wasn't yet the president, but I had been at the company for about 5 or 6 years. So my dad had already started to transition a lot of operational things to me, but he still didn't really own some of the bigger kind of decisions or things within the business. Going to this class, I would say for anyone who is in a family business or is an entrepreneur, they really put you to the test to be sure that you understand all of the aspects of running a business. So they take you through, you do classwork each week, but you're also in a cohort with other business owners. So you're hearing from them all the things that they are doing or not doing. And each week, we'd have 1 week we had a company that came in and talked all about succession planning and valuation. Another week we actually had a 3-week course all on the financial aspects of running a business. We had people who came in to talk about doing a deeper dive into who are your attorneys in your business and your accountants in your business, who are all the ancillary people that help support your business. So each week on Fridays, I would sit with my dad. He'd come to my office and I would have a yellow pad of questions that I went through with him and asked him. And I think that's when I became much more focused on creating a strategic plan for the business. It follows the Gazelle method, which is, you have rocks and you have, quarterly goals and measuring the things in the business that are really driving your success. So from there is when I really set the stage of saying, this is the kind of company we're going to be. This is how we're going to go forward. We looked at hiring some key people, the partners that my dad had started with in the business. Their contract terms were coming to an end. So, they retired, and that gave me the room to be able to start hiring people with more experience in our industry. That's pretty much, I think, was sort of the change, the pivot when we decided to really start to make big changes within the business. So,
like, why do you have this accountant that you've had for 40 years who's just by himself and not keeping up real well? And who's your attorney? Well, it's the guy that did our real estate, wasn't really a business attorney. And Jen, she found some really good assets when she was in the CEO program at UB. And so when I started to think about, is she ready to run the business, I talked to one of her mentors in that class. We met for breakfast. He said, she's ready.
What you did is brilliant. And whether, what prompted becoming a part of that organization for you, that program?
Another local business owner did the same pitch that I just did, and I still do that pitch. I just accepted the offer to be a mentor to a business that's in the CEO program that's based out of Lockport. So I've never done it before. I say no to it every year. And I just said yes to it this year. So I'm preparing for that meeting. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure I'm the person? They're like, we're sure you're the person. So I still am involved in the program. I'm in the mastery group there, although I think I'm kind of segueing out of that particular group. I'm really close with the people who I was in the group with 10 years ago. And I'm still close with the business owners that I was in my mastery group with. They're all coming here to my office in a couple of weeks. Just to get together and commiserate. So I think that that's one of the key things when you are a family business owner or any business owner or entrepreneur, it's to really put other businesses around you or have a cohort of some type where you can really kind of collaborate on things with. So I was lucky because my dad was still really involved in the business itself. I don't have a background in distribution and he does. One of the first hires that I made was bringing somebody in who had as big of a book of distribution experience as my dad did. And that was Todd Washburn, who came in to be our VP of supplier development. He actually wore two hats at the time because we were smaller then. But he still today is like our go-to resource for every product he can name and talk about any product and on the MRO or the construction side. So it's like once we realized what we wanted to do, we just really started to get after it. A big component of the CEL program is you create like a clinic. So you define like 3 key objectives that you want to tackle within your business. And at the time, we really needed to understand and define like who our profile customers were. We needed to know who kind of the profile and ideal distributor was and who the ideal supplier was. And like we still make refinements to that. And actually, we're going through that experience again with our team in this planning that we're doing, talking more about we stick really to that profile when we bring in a new prospect, but what does the ideal distributor look like and act like once they get into the group? And really the passion and the purpose, our core purpose of what we do is to ensure the success of our member companies. So many of them are small businesses like we are, like the people you serve. And my intent is to continue to provide more values to them to help them be better business owners. So we have a monthly business webinar series where we have different experts that come in and talk about hiring and recruiting and building company culture and all kinds of marketing and all kinds of topics. Our suppliers also host monthly product webinars. And then we recently, within the last 2 years, we created what we call the Net Plus Academy. And a core component of that is our online learning management platform, which is Bluevolt. So those are, I think we have over 750 courses in the online LMS that all of our members have access to for free. So they can take courses from Milwaukee Tool and Stanley Black & Decker and Radiance and all of our supplier partners that participate on the platform. Those employees can get into that platform and learn about the products that they sell.
Dan, when Jennifer started to go down the road of the CEL program, did you have any concerns or, anything that held you back? And what, if it did, what changed it? If it didn't, what were you, what excited you about what was happening?
I was excited because my wife and I have been spending time in Florida. It's kind of hard to run a business when you're back and forth. And I knew, that if this business was going to grow and succeed and keep going, that Jennifer was the one to take it to the next level. And certainly having a program like that at UB, once she explained what it was, it was perfect. It was really almost better than going and getting an MBA because of the relationships with not only the faculty who are all non-UB professors, they're all people from the real world in Western New York, and then the relationship with the students in her group. So I thought it was phenomenal, and all the questions that she came back and asked were things that were ready to be done. The accountant was tired, the attorney was tired. We needed a new look, and so I was very excited about it. And as she went through it, and we started putting a lot of these new elements in place, it was just logical that she would become the president. And then we, I started talking to our accountant and to our attorneys about how are we going to transition the ownership, which we did over time. And it sort of goes back to my cousin, Sam Ward, recapitalized the business a couple of times in order to bring some ownership of the business to me. And then in his estate, I sort of got the rest of the business, but we had non-voting common stock and voting common stock and preferred stock. So the first step was to transition the non-voting common to Jennifer. So I still had the common voting. So I still had control. And we did that over a 5-year period. And then last January, I gifted the common voting stock to Jennifer. So she's a 100% owner of the company. And it was the advice of a really great attorney who Jen met at CEO, who helped draft all the agreements. And then our new accountants were, one of whom I knew from another activity I was part of. They really helped with the valuation and with sort of giving, sort of a second opinion on what the attorney was doing.
Great. And it's, one of the things that you're mentioning is the fact of building that team, and that the people that got you here might not be the people that get you there.
Right. Exactly.
And that's, really important. And you're also talking about that, the technical piece as well, the quantifiable piece, and the soft side of things, which is, Jennifer's skill set and making things, happen that way through the CEL program at Buffalo, and then the technical side, of putting all those pieces together. There's a little piece that, I want to throw in there that make sure that people understand that in the absence of you being financially independent already, you may have had to have sold the business to Jennifer in order to capture those pieces. So one of the reasons I think it's really important that people understand that there is probably a spot for that financial advisor as well on that team, or somebody that, they have to be looped in, so that that you're going to be okay.
Yeah. And, and having the right tax advice as well.
Yes.
And how it's all going to be treated tax wise. So nobody's going to get some surprise letter from the IRS.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to make, is that my dad has been very organized financially his whole life. And when this transition was starting to take place, I have a friend who was also going through the transition of her family business, and it was a little arduous, and my dad had made it clear to me when my uncle Sam and he had sold the family distribution business, he got his equity then, and also has been really judicious with his finances his whole life, and got great advice from his attorneys and from his accountants. So it made the transition so much better. And I think one of the things that I'm really the most proud of is, from the time I came into the business until the time, because we had done a valuation quite a while ago, and then we had to do another valuation right before we did the full transition of the ownership. And the value of the stock had increased like 10 times, so I feel, personally accountable for that, the increase in value of the company. And so, I don't have any guilt about being gifted the business, because I've played a major role in growing the organization and increasing the value of the business significantly. So my message to anyone listening who's in a family business is, it doesn't have to be complicated. And if your children are there and they're involved in the business and they want to be there, just let it go. I mean, I'm also lucky that I have a father who made a decision a long time ago that he wanted to go to Florida for several months out of the year, and plays a lot of golf, and is really active with my mom, and just is happy, being here doing the jobs that we give him, which he does all kinds of different jobs, does a lot of numbers analysis for us and economic analysis, but also does different projects for the tech and IT team too, when they need some other, deeper dives on reporting and stuff done. So he's just as happy being here, like doing that and being a part of our meetings, as he is like living his life.
Right.
Would you say that's pretty accurate?
And another aspect of the transfer of ownership is, I'm kind of lucky that Jennifer only has one sister. She's a school principal, and so I had to treat her equally. Thank God she didn't have 10 sisters and brothers. It would have been a little more expensive. yeah, so I, just gave a cash gift to my other daughter that matched the value of the business. And I was kind of lucky along the way, trying to think how many years ago. It was probably 25 years ago. I was asked to be a trustee of Lockport Savings Bank. And it was right after we sold our business. So it had to be in 91, 92.
Okay.
Lockport Savings Bank was this, small mutual savings bank in Lockport. And, but they were transitioning their management, and the man they brought in to run the bank had a vision of growing the bank significantly. So maybe 3 years after I was on the board, we took it public and became First Niagara Financial Group. And there's benefits to being on the board of a public company.
Potentially, yeah, absolutely.
Stock options, fees,
Right.
Which certainly helped my life, and and it was a fantastic experience because
Right.
we did a lot of acquisitions, and so I got to really know a lot of the financial aspects of doing acquisitions, and watching Bill Swan, who was the president of the bank, watching him reach out to other banks who may not be thinking of being acquired, but he'd laid a lot of groundwork out there. So I mean that experience helped, and some of the people that I got to know through that process helped our transition to one of the accountants was very involved with the bank at the time.
Great. Both of you. So that's really interesting. If you look at the parallel there, both of you took some outside interests that came back and helped the business,
Mhm.
and so I think it's really important. Many times when I'm talking to family-owned businesses, and both of you have talked to a number of family-owned businesses through the years, there's that maverick kind of, I have to do it myself kind of attitude, especially in the founders that I talk to. And that leads to not always being open to new ideas and outside influence. And both of you were positively influenced by outside, influences. And so I share that because I think you may not have a CEL program in the town that you live in, but there's probably a college that has a family business, group available. There's probably a Vistage group somewhere around where you're at. There's a family, a business coach that maybe you should be looking at. And, I coach businesses as we've talked about, and the family businesses that I coach. I tell each of them, I would love for you to also be involved in a family business group or a Vistage group, to be surrounded by other CEOs, because, you just need to know that you're not alone.
For sure.
And right.
Yeah, and you build a great network too. The CEL program was started in Buffalo originally by a group of business owners who were trying to help support entrepreneurs that were getting businesses off the ground in Buffalo, or even smaller family businesses or smaller businesses. That was really their true intent, was, a group of attorneys and accountants and business, like more seasoned business owners, were coming together to support these businesses. And so it started, and then it started to grow so much so that University of Buffalo School of Management came in and said, hey, we'll pull this program into the university. We'll put some professors in to teach the classwork, but then the network is huge. It used to be a printed book. It was like this thick of all of the people in the community that are involved as volunteers that react and listen to people's objectives and help provide input. I have so many connections all across Buffalo in terms of the people that I know through that program. But yeah, whether you're in EO, like I know a lot of friends that are in EO, that's a national organization. YPO is a national organization. A lot of associations like our Industrial Supply Association, they have a family business component. They also have a women's business component, which I'm really heavily involved in. So those things are most definitely, that's such great advice, Michael, is that to be involved in something like that, especially like YPO, if you're a younger president or younger owner. I've heard great things about that group as well.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And all of those things, if I'm not mistaken, came from Vern Harnish. He
Yes.
started
Yep,
EO
Vern is
through the
the-
birthing
yeah.
of giants at MIT.
Yep. And Vern, the whole basis for how the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership out of UB, theirs is all based in Vern scaling up. That's really what they teach off of. So you learn right off the book from there. And I know EO is like an offshoot of that. And I have lots of friends that do that, but really similar models.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend those models for business owners.
When I started, I used the scaling up model,
Mhm.
and still use it 100% today, but it's just morphed. We work with Shannon Susko out of Canada, who does metronomics.
Okay.
But she's huge. I mean, she went through Vern's schooling and did everything. Her two companies were from Vern's. She just took some things where she added pieces to the framework to say, this is great, but this is what we did to take it to another level,
Sure.
kind of thing. And I've really appreciated what she's brought to the table. I know that you're a scaling up, business by looking at the core values on your website. So would you mind just talking about what does culture look like at Net Plus Alliance today? How does it, where does it help you? And has it ever hurt you?
I would say, to kind of describe our culture, I'll answer that question first. I do think we have a great culture here. It takes a lot to uphold a culture during COVID. So I'm just going to say big shout out to all of business owners and leaders out there that have been holding up culture through COVID and still are. It's a lot to manage people remotely and continue to sort of knit people together and bring them together and keep them on the same page when you're not physically with each other all the time. But I would say one of the things that I was taught by my dad, that he was taught by, by my Uncle Sam and probably my great uncles before that, is premise number one in business is take really good care of your people so they take really good care of your customers. And that was how my dad ran the business at Ward Beals and McCarthy, and it's how I run the business here. I take really good care of my employees. I treat them like family. We're very open and collaborative. So our structure here is fairly flat. People have a lot of ownership of their jobs. I learned that from a predecessor in a job that I had when I worked back in Boston at EF Education. They very much were like, gave you the ownership of your job and you did your job, independently. Nobody was standing over your shoulder watching and making sure that you were doing your work, but you were held accountable to the objectives that you were wanting to accomplish, like that quarter or that year, and the goals that were being set. So as a team, my dad and I really work together to kind of crunch numbers to set goals, but our team is 100% visible to what our goals are. We check in on those every week. And everyone is involved in the establishment of their department, bucket list of items that they really want to do to help reach those goals. So I think that really fosters the culture that we have. I don't know if you have anything that you want to add to that, but.
No, I mean, it's kind of funny when you think about culture today as opposed to 30 or 40 years ago. I didn't really think of culture at Ward Brothers or Ward Beals and McCarthy when I was running that business in the late 1980s. But we had a culture that just wasn't defined very well. When we sold the business and I went to work for the company that bought us, there was a total lack of culture. Then I realized what culture was. Just a quick story on when the culture of that business. When I was named as a trustee of Lockport Savings Bank, I mean, it's a tremendous honor. My boss, the company was based in Ohio, and my boss, the president of the company, said, "Well, do you really want to do that?" And I said, "Of course I do." He said, "Well, how much time is it going to take?" And I said, "Oh, like a day a month, probably, with board meetings and committee meetings." And he said, "Well, if you want to give up a week's vacation, then you can go ahead and do it.
Wow.
That's when I knew that I needed to find something else to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy when you think about it that way. It's the lack of culture, you know, it's huge. What is hiring and, employee retention been like for you over the last 18 months?
It's been good. We just hired a new person and he was here today for the first time. He's actually joining our team retreat next week. So I wanted him to be able to come into the office, which his company that he's transitioning out of gave him the time to be able to come here and sit and meet with our team today. I'm really excited because our business is based in Lockport and he is a Lockport native and graduate from Lockport High School. So I'm really happy to have hired somebody who I consider to be local.
Sure.
We did have a person, we hired and kind of lost a person in a short period last year, which I don't think is too unsimilar to what a lot of other business owners are dealing with. She had been at her other company for a short period of time before that. She was a recent graduate, just graduated in 2020, had a short stint with another company, took our job. We trained her for 3 months, and then another agency, an ad agency that she had interviewed with, called her and offered her a position, and that was really where her heart was wanting to work in advertising. So, no love lost. Other than the fact that we invested the time in other investments as well. And you, as a small business, you invest a lot when you hire somebody and train them. We take that hiring process really seriously. And so I think every time you go through anything like that, you learn from those experiences. So we sat back down with our HR consultants. We work through a PEO called Employer Services Corporation. So that's another kind of small business hack. We work through a PEO and they do all of our payroll, benefits, and HR.
Okay.
So kind of like a buying group.
Yep.
They take their entire book of employees across all of their companies that they work with, and they negotiate their healthcare rates and things like that. We sat down with them and they gave us some really good advice. They had said, we think that in this position, you're looking for someone who's a little more mature, looking for someone who's providing. This team is so autonomous in terms of how we work. You need somebody who's at a higher level for this position. So we elevated the position and found a great person. So
Great.
That was good advice for us. We also very active with interns. So we are very active with the University of Buffalo through their internship program and their internship department. And we always have at least one intern here at all times, sometimes two throughout the year.
Okay. That's great. One of the things that I learned from scaling up was that the whole top grading process. And I will share, if you haven't read top grading, read top grading. That one piece has helped me in our hiring better than anything else. And it's, it's how we hire and even for the smallest position, the lowest position in our business, when you have 3 employees and you're going to 4, that's a lot, you know what I'm saying? And if you've got, if you have 200 employees and bringing in that position, every position matters.
Yeah.
And so, hire slow, fire fast is kind of the way that we do things. And we really push for those values. We have questions around the core values of the company today. We describe what we do really well. We have questions that are searching out that, will they fit the core purpose? I want them to go to lunch with people and make sure that they're a fit and people can see themselves being comfortable as part of it. And people that I talk about this hiring process with, they're like, who's got time for all of that? I'm like, I don't have time to retrain somebody that lasts 3 or 4 or 6 months and then I have to do it again. So
I agree with that to a certain extent. I feel like it's that I know that exact same statement of hiring slow and firing fast. I do think that for small businesses, that can be really hard. Firing people can be hard because you're going to put a gaping hole in your business when that happens. And it's painful, especially small business owners that treat everybody like family. So separating from someone is difficult for the owner. It's difficult for the whole team. And I don't think it's ever a good or fun process. So the second part of that, in terms of hiring slow, not like a big luxury, although in the great resignation, as they're calling it, I think that small business owners are the benefit of that, because people are leaving big companies or they're leaving jobs where they don't feel like people take care of them. And we have very flexible work schedule. We are a very family friendly business, I would say, in the sense of allowing people to kind of work their lives, work their work around their lives, and all of our team is very committed to the work that they do. So they may pull off here, but then step up later, and the kind of ebb and flow of their work is done in a way that's healthy for them. And we've learned a lot of good lessons from that. We had an employee that came to us last year and said, I want to live in Florida. My grandparents are down there. The weather is nice. She had lived at home with her parents through COVID. And I was like, you want to still be here and work for us? Like, that's great. So she moved and it's been working wonderfully. So I think that's a big factor, is that you do need to maybe be efficient, not fast, not hire slow, but hire efficiently. I think you got to be efficient because people are getting picked up by companies pretty quickly. So that would just be my advice. Dot all the I's, like you said. We do core values in our interviewing process. Make sure you go through background checks or do credit checks if somebody's going to be handling money. We just used a great assessment tool onboarding our new employee, which really helps give us a better picture of kind of how they work and how we should be coaching them and how we should be onboarding them. So that was a great new thing that we just implemented.
Do you mind sharing the name of the assessment?
So the group that we used through our HR consultant was called Work Ignite, and I believe it was called TXT. I think that's the name of the assessment tool, but I will get back to you on that. So first time. So
Sure.
Spent more time reading the document than looking at the cover of it, but it's a fairly new tool and really very thorough and helpful already.
Right. Yeah, we use, DISC and Colby are the two that we utilized. And one of the things we found is by just using one assessment, it doesn't give you the full picture. And so you really need to have two or three or something that gives you a multifaceted look at somebody so that you can have just a more in-depth look. And
this one aligns the job with the person. So
perfect.
Molly, who's the director of marketing, who's hiring for the position, she actually did a survey questionnaire first, and then aligned that up against the strengths of our new employee, and it was really a nice fit. And there's just some things in terms of, like I said, with onboarding, to be sure that we're paying attention to some of the ways that he prefers to work.
Love it. Nice.
Yeah.
So if you're talking to, family businesses in front of you right now, and just wanted to impart, what other pieces of wisdom might you impart that we haven't talked about already? Is there anything else that you'd like to say to whoever's listening here to this podcast?
Let you go first.
That's kind of a tough question. I think you have to have the right the right family member or members. I know when I went to work for my cousin, he said, "That's it. We're not going to hire any other family members," because he said we don't have the bandwidth to hire that many people and pay that many people sort of at a family level. So I think you have to pick the right family member or members, depending on the size of the business. And I think your advice of doing something different before you go in the family business. I know in the distributors, a lot of who I knew growing up in the business, their parents, its father had sent them out to work for a friend, maybe across the country or somewhere else. Here, take care of my son for a couple of years, and knowing that we're going to want him back.
Right.
And I think that's really good advice. And then certainly some networking or some educational experience like Jennifer had was phenomenal for our company.
Great. Thanks, Dan.
And I would say trust. That would be the one word I would use, because through this whole time period working with my dad, he's always trusted me. And even when I've done things that didn't work out or I want to try something, he trusted me to do that. And if it didn't work out, we knew it wasn't going to be catastrophic. So I think to trust your children or your family members that come into the business, and also, taking that down to your employees, to really, we trust them to do the jobs that they do. And I know that they know that. They do an incredible job taking care of our members and our customers. And so I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice I would have for family businesses. Just really trust each other.
Love it. And, to that point, Jennifer, I want to, make sure that people understand how to do that. If they don't know it, Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Oh, yeah.
It builds the pyramid, and the foundation of that pyramid is all about trust. And understanding what trust means and what it is just being able to, like you said, I made a decision to go down a certain path. Dad trusted me to do it, whether it worked out or it didn't work out, and it did. But we learn from, if there is a mistake in there, we learn from it. And so, Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team and how to overcome them. I tell everybody, whether it's a family business or or you're just working with your non-family members, your leadership team, it's a great framework to continue those kinds of things. And when you look at your core values, it's all throughout there, grow together, be nimble, value relationships, be accountable for results, embrace change, be honest and genuine. If you haven't read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, you will love it. And it'll be a great book club for your leadership team to go through. But it fits everything that you talk about in your core values. I love them.
Thank you.
I am so excited and really feel blessed that the two of you shared what you've shared with us today. I want to say thank you to Jennifer and Dan. And if people, heard this and wanted to reach out in terms of if somebody from the Buffalo area wanted to talk to you about CEL, is that okay?
Of course.
And then the other one is if you're a family business in the construction or manufacturing industry and want some information about, this buying, group alliance, Net Plus Alliance, you should definitely reach out to Jennifer as well for that.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you for that pitch. Appreciate it.
No problem. I'm Michael Palumbos. This has been the Family Biz Show. I'm with Family Wealth and Legacy in Rochester, New York. And we really appreciate you listening today. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss future episodes. And we'll talk to you the next time on the Family Biz Show. Thank you.